Fat acceptance is a cult.
Just a reminder that I am very fat and very sexy, and I am 100% glorifying obesity.
I want to inspire big girls all over the world. This is what I manifest every single day.
Choo choo. Choo choo.
There's nothing you can do.
I'm fat and I'm sexy.
I'm fat and I'm sexy.
Sure, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I don't know about you. I don't find any sexiness in contributing to the statistics that obesity is the leading cause of death in the US. Very hot, I know.
Just because I'm fat, that doesn't invalidate the things that I say.
She died.
You ready to get supersized?
She died too.
Today I've got the big Fruit Loop.
He's dead.
Join me on my Fat Positive radio show,
Which didn't last long because she died.
Unlike how Dove or the new wave of Victoria's Secret wants you to believe, healthy beauty does not come at every size, and certainly not at a lot of the socially noble, body positive plus sizes. Yet it is absolutely not wholesome to point that out. So much corporate glorification has been done to powder the fat elephant in the room, that obesity is in fact a disease, not a bragging point. But corporations don't want you to get well, because there's a gold mine in fatness. Not just in convincing you to shed it, but also for you to keep it. Take body positive all-star Dove for instance. Real beauty comes at every size. They stretch out their plastic bottles and video game figures to slap on words like beautiful, sexy, confident whenever they can. Like every other human, I wanted to believe that it was to support the self-love journey of women and leave it at that. But no, I decided to ruin my day and my trust in humanity by researching a bit more and found out that Dove is owned by Unilever. And guess what else Unilever owns? Ben & Jerry's ice cream, Magnum ice cream, and many other ice creams, Hellmann's mayo in all your greasy burgers, Skippy peanut butter, a selection of frozen foods. I can go on. Isn't it nice to encourage your consumers to accept their enlarging body and deteriorating health as the ideal in order to sell more of your processed foods because their beautiful bodies deserve more? Has body positivity, a movement intended to uplift women, become just manipulative limits to our acceptable emotions?
My dear sweet child, that's what I do. It's what I live for.
And worse, a cover for big food, big farming, and big pharmaceutical companies to profit off a nation of increasingly sick and fat people. None of this is a coincidence.
So the industry has engineered what they call the bliss point for the perfect amount of sugar in products, not too little, not too much, working on maximizing the allure of their products.
Quote, "We like them fat." Pick any ultra-processed foods at your local grocery store, for example. Some Kraft mac and cheese and Nestle drumstick paired with some Kit Kat, Coffee Crisp, Smarties, and why not throw in some Laffy Taffy? Pop in the Kool-Aid and 4 cans of Dr. Pepper to keep hydrated. Oh, and can't forget the Oreo and Chips Ahoy. 4 cans of Orange Fanta for the vitamins.
Fanta.
Balance, as one may say. As conventional beauty standards have become much more accepting and ambiguously defined by beauty giants. But guess who owns the beauty giants? Conglomerates like Nestle, Unilever, who sell you anything from chocolate to ice cream to frozen foods, and that is when the Dove body soaps begin to make sense. Not saying that all body positive and fat acceptance campaigns are there to manipulate and trick you into increasing your body fat percentage without limits. And that is exactly the issue. So much of the message comes actually from an extremely caring and helpful perspective to help remove the stigma around plus-size people. But also, so much fat glorification has been disguised as acceptance.
Oh my God.
And when the majority of your stakeholders need to make money from selling frozen pizzas and ice cream, the votes are not up to you. Hiding profit-generating fat glorification under the term fat acceptance is genius in two ways. First, it plays on the sentiment of correcting social injustices in society. Yes, arguably so, the statistical likelihood of fat and obese people facing more difficulties in society, such as prejudices, is a lot higher. And the stigmatization in media brought unfair shaming to obese individuals, which should never be normalized. But glorifying obesity, the disease, as conventional beauty hints at a moral superiority and makes anyone's opinions who differ morally shallow, regardless if fat is unhealthy or not. Second, a food company telling you that being fat is natural, which isn't, and awesome is not so convincing.
There's no waistline worry with Coke, you know. This individual size bottle has no more calories than half a grapefruit.
When you can spot their profit motive from 50 miles away.
Coke is low in calories, too. Say now, don't you get any thinner?
A direct hard sell won't work here. But when a beauty or self-care company you never associate with frozen pizza casts someone plus size for a commercial, you get fired up with a sense of justice. Yeah, that is beautiful too. Don't get me wrong, overly restrictive beauty with models who are only Kate Moss level Heroin chic is also problematic because again, it is not healthy. But as much as many wish, the spectrum of healthy does not stretch over to obesity. It is amazing that women of all sizes are loving and accepting who they are, but genuine self-love and confidence comes from within and not society telling you or some ads telling you that your size is also quote-unquote beautiful. What we're talking about here is not the opposite of fat shaming. For shaming someone for any reason is not acceptable behavior because it does not come from a place of genuine care of wanting to help them be well. We're talking about the glorification of fat disguised as acceptance.
Positivity is toxic because it pretends to be rooted in compassion and kindness. But in reality, it encourages women to engage in very destructive behaviors. It encourages women to be obese, unhealthy, and be averse to personal responsibility and discipline.
If you think most body positivity campaigns are to help you love yourself, I'm sorry, honey. Corporate America is a surfacely sweet, but extremely cruel place.
It's like, how can you not see the problem? They have to see it and just not care. They have to just be like, well, we're gaining profit. Do you see how much this McDonald's is making? Put another one across the street.
There is nothing wrong with fat acceptance. Acceptance of reality is the first and most essential step to all or any type of progress. But the importance of what to do after accepting the reality is often neglected and never talked about. Telling fat people to keep eating the way that's not serving their health because they are beautiful is like telling an alcoholic to keep on drinking because they're fun. It's the easy and profitable thing to do.
Having a fat country makes us money.
But at the end of the day, it is irresponsible to push unhealthy, addictive behaviors to a greater extreme with the power of both brainwashing, quote-unquote self-love ads and processed foods designed in a way that's addicting, easy to eat, and easy to repeat the eating pattern. It's not a simple good versus bad food, normal versus fat problem. It's a whole addictive pattern building trap.
I lost 60 pounds in 6 months. Everyone was so happy for me. I hated myself. I hated the way I looked. I hated why I exercised.
Naturally fat. Are daily trips to McDonald's genetics? Is eating chips in bed genetics? Is being allergic to the gym genetics? Is running 100 miles genetics? Back in a universe where fat just meant fat and not a compliment or insult, fat just means you have excess energy stored in your body that you are not using. Obesity or overweight is a disorder involving excessive body fat that increases the risk of health problems. Notice how something that elevates your risk of dying of cardiac arrest is a disorder and is not normal. Needless to say, glamorously framed as the modern sexiness. Yet times and times again, science and data say one thing and media and advertising say another. Beauty is supposed to be diverse and natural. But there is nothing natural about being obese. Obesity prevalence was stably low until shooting up post the 70s. And even though there is no data evidently backing up its absence in our hunter and gatherer days, rare civilizations removed from modern processed foods and lifestyles such as the Chimene tribe is a close modern case. The Chimene, a Bolivian population living in a subsistence lifestyle of hunting, gathering, fishing, and farming, had the lowest levels of coronary heart diseases reported to date and statistically insignificant obesity. And yes, they also eat sugar and starchy carbs, just harvested by themselves. So do these people just have some God-sent fat-proof genetics? No. The overall Bolivian population that shares similar genetics is still subject to 28 and 17% of obesity for women and men. So if they also eat carbs, fat, protein, just like the American diet, why are they rarely inflicted with fat-related health complications? Is all the difference really in the absence of food processing? According to CDC, Americans are eating more calories on average than they did in the 1970s. Between 1971 and 2000, the average man added 168 calories to his daily fare, while the average woman added 335 calories a day. What is driving this trend? Experts say it's a combination of increased availability, bigger portions, and more high-calorie foods, but nothing beats the devious design of processed foods to get people hooked as an addictive coping mechanism to rising psychological issues. Food addiction is a carefully designed process. People aren't stuffing their faces in beans when they're having a bad day. Quote, foods that are very high in fat and carbohydrate in equal ratio don't exist naturally, said Gerhardt, a clinical psychologist at the University of Michigan. It is something that is designed by food scientists in a laboratory to look a certain way, feel a certain way in your mouth, smell a certain way when you open the package. So once you had one pleasant experience with it, you want more. And you want it more often. Food addiction is on the rise, and the conglomerates are normalizing it. Or rather, glamorizing the consequence of it. So much of the fat acceptance movement is actually a brainwashing ad for addictive junk food. And yes, excuse my language, for it is now politically incorrect to call food good or bad. And I agree. It's all based on perspective. Good for what and bad for what, and how much of good before it turns not so good. Because good versus bad is so subjective, it's easier than ever for food companies to manipulate the concept. Because the easier answer is always one that makes you feel good. To eat as much as you want and still feel great about yourself.
Get that fiber and the antioxidants and just feel.
And the greatest beneficiaries to glorifying this disease is the toxic triad of big farming, big food, and big pharma for creating a nation of sick and fat people. Let me put it into context. About a third of our economy thrives on making people more fat and sick. Big farming grows 500 more calories per person per day than 25 years ago. Industrially processed foods with addictive combinations of fat, sugar, and salt deter the stop signals for eating. The sicker our population, the more medications are sold for high cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure, depression, and other lifestyle-driven diseases. While more and more of us believe not only is this okay, this type of sickness is sexy and beautiful. And sadly, the profit-driven version of the fat acceptance movement targets women way more. Why do we see a range of plus-size models from mannequins in retail to Victoria's Secret fashion shows, while men's fashion still shows buff and toned models and plastic mannequins? Something does not add up. Perhaps it is because of the preconceived notion that women care more about appearances, or that many women still take the main responsibility for shopping for food for the whole household, which drives more impact in speeding up the fattening of the population, leading to more sickness. The spiral itself, from farming to food processing to solving a naturally increasing problem, is just bleak and sickening. Self-acceptance is not the opposite from self-improvement, and is certainly not the logical reason to regenerate 90% of your cells from frozen pizzas, chocolates, chips, and whatever genius foods corporations created to keep you addicted and sick. Part of loving yourself is to actually take accountability for your well-being instead of letting profit-seeking commercials tell you that you are enough. Being positive does not mean being unrealistic. It requires the courage to face the discomfort of broken delusions and be willing to make changes if needed.
Body positivity movement has now resulted in magazine covers that actually says this is healthy. The lifestyle of being obese is now not only beautiful, but it's healthy.
Glorifying a disease is not self-love, it's delusion.
Of course I don't have any health problems. I'm always out of breath and it's hard to do things, but that's because of fat phobia. And doctors not listening to me. It has nothing to do with the fact that my fupa restricts my movement.
And despite how impossible it seems, what you do after acceptance is still your choice to make. That's a food for thought.